Hello and welcome back to Irish History Unfiltered. My name is Finn Dwyer. I'm an Irish historian. I'm also the creator of the Irish History podcast. You can find a link to that beneath this video. Now today I have a fascinating story for you. It's about an Irish woman who played a key role in the Second World War but is almost entirely forgotten. Now to start this story we need to kind of relook at the way the history of the Second World War is told, because this Irish woman from Galway called Emily Anderson has been totally written out of history for a couple of reasons. As we're going to see later on in this video, the work that she did was highly secret, but also I think the fact that she's Irish has led to her being written out of history. So every country tells their history from their own point of view. Like that's obvious. Like in the US, people think that the US was the key player in the Second World War. And in Britain, that's the same. So the history of the Second World War in Britain tends to emphasize on British involvement. And this means that lots of other people are written out of the story. So for example, in the Second World War, Britain was totally reliant on thousands and thousands of people around the world helping their struggle against Nazi Germany. They had thousands of troops from India. There was tens of thousands of Irish people working in British factories. There was thousands and thousands of Poles that ended up in Britain after fleeing Poland during the Nazi invasion of 1939. So all these people helped Britain win the war, but they're often written out of the story. And today I'm going to focus on one Irish woman. This is a woman called Emily Anderson, who was born in Galway in 1891. And last year I spoke to the historian Uí Chionna, who's written a book about Emily and revealed her contribution to Britain's war effort in the Second World War. So we started our conversation by looking at Emily's early life. So as I said, she was born in 1891 in Galway in the west of Ireland. She was the daughter of a Presbyterian family. Her father was the president of what was then called Queen's College Galway. Today it's called University College Galway. And in her early life, Emily's upbringing would actually give her some talents that would become essential to her code-breaking career later on. So to start, Jackie and I discussed her early life, her education, and how she started to learn, I suppose, tools that would become essential to be a code breaker. Jackie explains it here.
She was raised by governesses who in the main were Swiss governesses, so which meant she was learning Swiss and German from the cradle, effectively, from her succession of governesses. So she becomes very fluent in those languages. Her father sends her off, in fact, brings her and her siblings to Germany during the summer months to spend time with German-speaking families.
So Emily Anderson would go on to become one of the most famous code breakers in the Second World War. But her career began much earlier in code breaking, all the way back in the First World War. But I suppose to understand her story, we need to look at first why Emily left her native Galway and moved to London. Now Jackie is going to explain how her sexuality played a major role in this. Emily was a lesbian, and in Ireland, in the west of Ireland, she probably found the environment that she lived in pretty stifling. So Jackie explains how she went to London and how she found a greater degree of freedom there.
She was a gay woman. She found her tribe, if you like, when she moved to London. She moved into all-women hostels and women's clubs where she could actually meet other women who were similar to herself and who lived their lives as independent gay women and really didn't make any apology for that fact.
So Emily was in London during the First World War, and it was actually at this early stage that she got recruited into British intelligence. Jackie explains how that happened and how Emily would prove herself to be an excellent code breaker.
Somebody somewhere says to somebody somewhere, this woman would be a very good code breaker, and also she'd be very discreet. She comes from the right family, she's made of the right stuff, she'd be brilliant. And it turned out to be an inspired hire because she, from the very outset, astonished people by just how naturally it came to her to break these incredibly complex codes.
Now the First World War ended in 1918, and there was a huge demobilisation of the British Army in general at the end of that conflict. That meant all sections of the army were kind of wound down, so most code breakers were let go. But Emily Anderson had proven herself to be so skilled in code breaking that she was actually one of the tiny few kept on at the end of the First World War by British intelligence.
I think at the end of the war, her bosses, particularly the man who takes over as the head of signals intelligence after the war, Commander Alistair Denniston, he's known Emily for 3 years at this stage. He knows how exceptional she is. And he knows that they're never going to be able to train anybody to be as good as she is. So at the end of the war, when everybody else has been let go and many professors are going back to their schools, and it was assumed that Emily Anderson would come back to Galway and start teaching German and French again, But instead, she's made an offer she really can't refuse. And they pick her along with 3 other women. Only 4 women in total were chosen from all of the women who'd been employed to stay on. Because, as her boss said, the services of these women are exceptional.
So Emily Anderson had been kept on by British intelligence at the end of the First World War, and this meant that by the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, she had decades of experience behind her, and she was among the first groups to be sent to Bletchley Park, which would become the famous Allied centre of code-breaking in the Second World War. Now Jackie explains what exactly Emily was doing in the Second World War, because she worked on something called Diplo, which was diplomatic intelligence.
And she was literally intercepting messages from Hitler to Mussolini and vice versa. And she was translating them because Italian Diplo was her speciality. So she knew before anybody else what Mussolini's intentions were.
Now, Emily Anderson was such a legendary code breaker that she would actually be sent from Britain to North Africa in the midst of the Second World War, where she was based in Cairo. So in North Africa, in the early stages of the conflict, Britain was fighting the Italians, and Jackie explains how Emily in Cairo would play a key role in the British victory over the Italians in North Africa.
The East Africa campaign was the one that Emily was given her OBE for. The Italians had 220,000 troops located fighting against the British and had scored many numerous victories and successful victories. But they began to falter, and they began to falter and get clumsy and lazy about their code breaking. And because of that, Emily Anderson was able to pounce. With years of experience under her belt, she was able to literally intercept messages and decode them within minutes of them actually being intercepted. So she was giving almost real-time information to the British commanders in East Africa. And when she was awarded her OBE, they basically said that General Wavell, who was the commander-in-chief, said that no commander had ever been better served by intelligence than he had. And that intelligence came from Emily Anderson and her team in Cairo.
Now, Emily Anderson had played a key role in British code-breaking in the Second World War. We've already heard how she played a central role in those British victories in North Africa. But what's all the more remarkable about this incredible Irish woman is that she never told a soul about her work, even after the war ended. No one knew what she had done, as Jackie now explains.
And not one person ever suspected that this neatly dressed, prim, spinsterish, if you'll use the expression, that's their words, not mine, that she could possibly have been this ace codebreaker.
Emily Anderson's life is absolutely incredible. Jackie and myself recorded a full-length podcast about her entire life, where we explore her early years, all the work that she did, because she did a lot more than just what I've talked about in this video. But anyway, you can find a link to that podcast in the description below. I'll also have a link to Jackie's book on Emily in that description as well. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Irish History Unfiltered, because I've got some great content coming in the next couple of weeks. And also, if you ring the bell, you'll get a notification when those videos drop.